The stranger at the table. Thanksgiving had always been my favorite holiday. Not for the turkey or the pie, but for the sense of belonging, the familiar noise of voices talking over each other, the smell of spices drifting from the kitchen. This year, though, when I walked through the door, I felt like an intruder. The house looked the same creaky floorboards, same picture frames lining the hallway, but something about it felt different, colder. My sister and her fiancé sat at the head of the table like new rulers of an old kingdom. They laughed easily, filling the space that once felt like it belonged to all of us. When I tried to sit down, Mom's eyes flickered toward the corner. She pointed at the folding chair against the wall. "That's where you belong." Out of the way, her words stung more than I expected. I dragged the chair across the floor, its metal legs scraping against the wood, and set it up at the far end of the table. The others barely noticed. My cousin laughed. "Be grateful. You're even invited." I forced a smile, stabbing at the food on my plate. Inside, my stomach twisted. I glanced around the table, searching for Dad's eyes, for some flicker of defense. But he kept his head down, chewing slowly, as if the food required his full attention. I wasn't a son here. I was an afterthought, a ghost invited out of obligation. As the meal dragged on, my sister and her fiancé leaned in close, whispering excitedly. I caught bits of their conversation. "Put the house on the market. After the wedding, profit will be good, especially with the renovations. Finally, moving to the city, better schools for the kids." My fork froze, halfway to my mouth. The house, my house, the home I had bled myself dry to protect. They weren't even planning to live here long. It was just a stepping stone for them, an investment to flip. My throat tightened. I wanted to slam my fist on the table, to shout, "You're only able to sell that house because I saved it. You're feasting at this table because I starved for you." But again, I stayed silent. Instead, I excused myself early, muttering something about work in the morning. As I walked out into the cold night, my sister's laughter trailed after me, light and careless. 2 days later, another message from Mom arrived. "Mailbox is officially switched. Don't use this address anymore." I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. It was final now. Not just the locks, not just the holidays. My name had been erased from the very foundation of our family. That night, I sat in my studio, apartment, the silence pressing in. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and checked the transaction history for the first time in years. The balance hadn't dipped. The autopay was gone. Yet, guilt gnawed at me without my payments. The bank would come calling. The house would be in danger again. My family had no idea how close they were to disaster. I hovered over the button to restart autopay. One click, and I could save them again. But then I remembered Thanksgiving, the folding chair, my cousin's mocking voice, my mother's dismissive tone. They had already chosen to erase me. Why should I keep sacrificing myself for people who treated me like a stranger at their table? But instead, I played dumb. "Maybe you should talk to the bank directly," I suggested. She exhaled shakily. "We're in the middle of planning the wedding. We can't deal with this right now." "Not my problem," I wanted to say, but I bit my tongue. Days later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. Her message was shorter than ever. "They say the payment stopped. What's happening?" I didn't respond. Then one rainy evening, there was a knock at my apartment door. When I opened it, my sister stood there, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She looked small, broken, nothing like the glowing woman from Thanksgiving. "Please," she whispered. "The bank is threatening foreclosure. We can't afford it. I know you always handled things. Just this once. Help us." or words hung in the air like smoke. I felt the old instinct rising in me, the urge to fix everything, to shoulder the weight, to be the quiet savior again. But then I remembered her sitting at the head of the table, laughing with her fiancé, about selling the house for profit. I remembered Mom telling me to sit in the corner as if I were nothing more than furniture. I stepped aside, letting her stand in the doorway, shivering from the rain. My heart ached, but my voice was steady. I can't. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? You can't? You always... Not anymore. For the first time, I saw anger flash across her face, but beneath it, there was fear, real fear. She turned and walked away, her heels splashing through the puddles. I closed the door, leaned against it, and exhaled. My chest felt both heavy and strangely light. For the first time, I wasn't the safety net. I apologize for that. The midnight text, the sound of my phone buzzing, yanked me out of a restless sleep. The room was dark, except for the faint orange glow of the street lamp, bleeding through the blinds. My tiny studio apartment was silent. The kind of silence that felt heavy. Almost accusing, I blinked at the screen. 2 Edgy M. Mom's name lit up in cold blue letters. At first, I thought it was an emergency. Maybe Dad had fallen sick. Maybe something had happened to my sister. But when I opened the message, the words cut through me sharper than any knife. Don't come back, we've changed the locks. Mailbox is under your sister's name now. I stared at the message, my chest hollow. That was it. No explanation. No warmth, no trace of the family I had broken myself to protect. I set the phone down on the peeling nightstand and pressed my palms against my eyes. Images rushed forward, memories stacked on top of each other. The house, the creak of the wooden stairs. The smell of Dad's coffee every morning. The chipped blue paint on the mailbox that I had quietly repainted one summer, so the neighbors wouldn't call it the ugly box at the end of the street. That house wasn't just 4 walls. It was my anchor, and they had handed it over to someone else. My sister and her fiancé like I had never existed. Years earlier, when Dad lost his job and the foreclosure notice arrived in a plain brown envelope, the family had sat in the living room in stunned silence. My sister had cried. Mom kept muttering about God testing us. Dad just stared at the floor, his face gray. I have been the one who acted. I sold my car. I moved out of my decent apartment and into this shoebox studio, with a bathroom door that barely closed. I ate instant noodles for weeks, skipped nights out with friends, worked overtime until my body ached. And with every paycheck, I set up an auto-pay to cover the mortgage quietly, consistently without ever demanding thanks. The house stayed, the foreclosure notices stopped. My parents smiled again. My sister carried on with her life, never once asking who was paying the bills. And I told myself it didn't matter. I didn't need the credit, I just wanted to keep them safe. But then came the night of the family meeting when everything shifted. We sat around the dining table. The familiar tablecloth, with little sunflowers, was spread out beneath the plates, though it was stained from years of spaghetti dinners. My sister was holding her fiancé's hand, glowing with the kind of happiness that made her look like a stranger. Mom cleared her throat. Your sister and her fiancé will take over the house, she said softly. It'll be their start as a family. It's time to pass it on. I froze. Pass it on, I looked around, waiting for someone to acknowledge me. Dad coughed, avoiding my eyes. My sister smiled nervously, squeezing her fiancé's hand tighter. No one said a word about me, about the years I had kept the roof above them, about the sacrifices. I felt invisible at that table, like a ghost haunting a home that was no longer mine. I wanted to speak, to shout, to slam my fists on the table and demand recognition. But the words stuck in my throat. If I told them the truth, would they even care? Or would they just accuse me of trying to ruin her happiness? So I swallowed the truth. I sat there in silence while my family made plans around me, as though I were just another chair in the room. Now sitting in my dark studio, with Mom's cold message glowing on the screen, the weight of it all crashed down on me. They hadn't just given my sister the house. They had erased me. I opened my banking app, staring at the auto-pay button linked to the mortgage. My thumb hovered over it for years. This button had drained me dry, quietly bleeding my account so they could live comfortably. All I had to do was cancel it. One small tap and the lifeline I had been feeding them would be gone. My hand trembled. I thought about Dad's coffee, Mom's laughter when we decorated the Christmas tree, my sister chasing me around the yard when we were kids. But then I remembered Mom's message. Don't come back, I pressed cancel. The screen blinked, auto-pay removed. I set the phone down and sat in the silence, a strange calm spreading through me. The weight was still there, but it had shifted for the first time in years. The house was no longer my responsibility. I closed my eyes knowing that storm was coming for them. And for once I wasn't going to stop it. The burned bridge. The calls didn't stop. First it was my sister, her voice sharp, with panic, then Mom, her tone brittle, almost begging. Even Dad left a voicemail, short, gruff, as if speaking to me cost him pride. He could barely spare. Each time I let the phone ring. Each time I silenced the buzzing and set it face down on the nightstand. For years, my life had revolved around saving theirs. Every paycheck, every sleepless night, every sacrifice was poured into the foundation of that house. And in return, a folding chair at Thanksgiving. A message telling me not to come back. Now the cracks in their perfect picture were spreading, and for once, I wasn't there to patch them. One evening, Mom called again. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, some stubborn thread of guilt, made me swipe the screen. Her voice was trembling. Please. We're behind 3 months already. The bank, they're talking about foreclosure. You can't let this happen. I stared at the ceiling of my apartment, tracing the water stain that looked like a crooked smile. I don't have the money, I lied. It wasn't true. With auto-pay canceled, I was finally saving. For the first time, my account wasn't gasping for air. But I couldn't tell her that. Because if I did, I knew I'd be pulled right back into the cycle. There was a pause on the line, then her voice cracked. You're abandoning us. A bitter laugh rose in my throat, but I swallowed it. Instead, I simply said, Goodbye, Mom, and hung up. The silence after that call felt different, not accusing, not heavy, just still. When payday came around, I opened my banking app and stared at the balance. It was higher than I'd seen in years. I transferred some into savings, bought groceries that weren't instant noodles, even splurged on a second-hand couch to replace a folding chair in my studio. For the first time in a long time, I was building a life for myself, but the guilt still lingered, coiled in my chest, like smoke. A month later, my sister called again. This time, her voice wasn't sharp or panicked. It was hollow. He left me, she whispered. I frowned. What do you mean? My fiancé, he said he didn't sign up for this mess. He packed his things and moved out. Her words were flat, but I could hear the tears she was holding back. The house is going up for auction. Mom and Dad are devastated. They're going to lose everything. For a long time, I said nothing. Part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort her, to remind her that no house, no matter how broken, was worth her breaking too. But another part of me, the part still bruised from years of invisibility, stayed quiet. "I'm sorry," I said, finally, and I meant it. But I didn't offer to fix it. She sniffled. "You really won't help." I closed my eyes. Not this time. The line went dead. On the morning of the auction, I drove past. The old neighborhood. The house looked the same from the outside. The chipped shutters, the flower bed Mom never managed to keep alive. The porch swing that creaked when you sat on it